What did you make? I mean, obviously you couldn't hear everything at the same time here, but essentially Franken apologizing, saying that he has learned from this, move on from this, but he's not moving from the Senate for this. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a process in place. It's called the Ethics Committee. If they make a recommendation, Chuck Grassley will be one of the jurors that will look at that evidence. But I think you have to back up a step, because I've been involved in this thing about whether Congress should live by its laws, because in 1995 I got the Congressional Accountability Act passed, which covers Congress by those dozen pieces of legislation. Between 1938 and 1995, we've exempted ourselves. So you can't have one set of laws, whether it deals with sexual harassment or workplace safety or civil rights, one set of laws for America, or Capitol Hill, and the rest for the rest of America. We got to all live under the same laws. So we got to review our sexual harassment process that people go through, because it seems to work against the victim. And so I'm writing a piece of legislation, or I should say at this point working on a piece of legislation to address that issue. But I think as far as Senator Franken's concerned, he said he's going to cooperate, and we got to let the process work its way out. But we can't tolerate sexual harassment.
Did you know, or were you aware that there was a system in place and a payment system in place to settle these type of suits that would come up?
Well, the extent to which it's connected to the Congressional Accountability Act, and I'm not sure every aspect of it is, I'm aware of that because I'm responsible for that legislation. But there is too much secrecy in the process, and to answer your question, I was not aware of it. But I believe I've been a person that's been talking about transparency brings accountability to government, and in fact, even in the private sector, transparency brings accountability, and we need more accountability, especially in government.
You know, what's to stop people from thinking, if you look at this, sir, on both the Democratic side and the Republican side, and now, Congressman Conyers, and a long history, the longest in the House, where he feels compelled and maybe under pressure from leadership to step down from his House Judiciary post, that something's wrong there. Something's wrong where you are right now.
Well, I'm the wrong one to ask, because I can't visualize what I've heard some of these men doing in front of women that were probably under their power, and what they did. It's outrageous. It's despicable. I don't know how many adjectives you have to use. It's just not something that I feel even comfortable about talking about. So you're probably asking the wrong person, except I just know it's plain wrong.
So what happens if Roy Moore is elected in Alabama, and these are transgressions and problems and charges that date back 40 years? Would you agree with an effort on the part of your colleagues to expel him?
Well, there again, I've got to give you the same answer I just gave you when you asked me about Senator Franken and the Ethics Committee. He will go before the Ethics Committee. We'll have people under oath. He'll be under oath. Accusers will be under oath. And it takes 2/3 vote to exclude him. And I'm a juror looking at that information. But again, I have every reason to believe the women, but still it's kind of a he said, she said,
right.
And so when people are under oath, you might get a different point of view of that. And I think you have to let the process work out. But it may be that that's not even going to be an issue when the people of Alabama get done speaking.
Senator, there is a sort of confusion here as to what this Roy Moore Senate seat could mean if Roy Moore wins it. The president has already indicated, or the White House has indicated, that though he supports Roy Moore, he's not going to campaign for him. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the president has to speak for himself. I think I've said in the past that Moore ought to withdraw, and I can say this for sure. When I was asked to endorse him, I didn't endorse him, so I didn't have to withdraw my endorsement like a good number of my colleagues had to.
Yeah, there is that. Do you get a sense, Senator, all this drama on both sides, and with the character questions, whether we have Al Franken or the charges against Roy Moore, and I know all of these are different, and Conyers, of course, a separate story still, that it is a distraction in the way things you do want to see, like those tax cuts. Do you think any of this gets in the way of that?
Absolutely not. Now, it might depend on who gets elected after December the 12th. If we don't have the tax bill done, it might have something to do with that particular point. But right now, I think that the president's agenda, particularly from the majority of the Republicans in the Senate, I mean, we have a Republican majority in the Senate and the House, we have to deliver. We failed so much on Obamacare. We can't fail again on a major issue.
How do you think the vote is shaping up right now?
I think I heard very good news today. Number one, I heard that Senator Rand Paul's a yes. I've heard that Corker worked during the break with White House and other leaders because he wants to become a yes. I haven't heard from Ron Johnson yet at this point, but I also heard a report over the news about Murkowski that she is leaning yes, and that's about all I can tell you. But that's 4 of 6 that were in doubt,
yeah.
And you can only lose 2 of those 6.
Now, we're hearing separately, sir, that Senator Daines, I believe he's the junior senator from Montana. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. He's a no vote right now as things stand. His questioning seems to be around the treatment of businesses, so it sounds very similar to Senator Johnson's concerns. Are you surprised that just as you put out a potential no fire from some of those names you just mentioned, that you've got other no's to consider?
Well, the answer to that could be yes, but I think we concentrate on those 6. And I think that there has to be a real effort to satisfy Senator Johnson. And if that would satisfy Senator Daines, if they are speaking with the same language, then obviously that takes care of itself if you satisfy Johnson. And I don't see how you could lose somebody that's as sincere about his issue as Johnson is.
All right, real quickly, Senators Corker and Flake have had a sort of an acrimonious relationship, probably putting it mildly, with the president. Could you ever envision, knowing both men as well as you do, sir, that they would vote against this based on that?
No, they'll vote on the issue. They're very principled people. They're going to vote on the issue.
So you don't think they would use the deficit or the fact this could worsen the deficit as a smokescreen for just sticking it to the president?
Let me ask you this. Is your question, would they vote against it just because they've had problems with Trump?
Right.
I was answering that question. And they'll base their vote on principle. Now, how it affects the deficit is one of those principles.
Okay, fair enough. Senator, thank you for taking the time. We very much appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.